You all requested it, so I made it. Garou vs Boros, the battle between godlike beings who could destroy the entire world. Let's see who wins and why. We'll be going over every single form of Garou and Boros and how they would relate to one another in different types of settings. And we'll also be treating both characters in character and how they would actually fight and not just the best way to fight. With that, let's get started. Disclaimer, I have already made a power scaling video on both these characters, with Boros' video being nearly an hour long and Garou's video being over 2 hours long. So if there's any details it seems I'm skipping over, that's because I've already covered it in those videos. Go check them out before coming to this video. Let's start off this versus battle by establishing a baseline for that of Armoured Boros. If you remember in my Boros video, we talked about how Armoured Boros should be similar to that of Orochi, and let me explain why. So when it's stated by Murata, when he's hyping up Orochi and all his attack power, he says that Orochi would be someone so strong that all three of Boros' generals have to team up and use good strategy to be able to defeat him. This is relevant because when Boros is analysing Saitama destroying 23% of his ship, he's actually disinterested in the idea of Saitama destroying 23% of his ship. He sends his generals off to go do it instead. However, Boros is very happy once he sees one of his generals get one-shot by Saitama, implying that he thinks himself would deal with someone who could one-shot his generals, or, in this circumstance, would be more powerful than all three of his generals combined, just like Orochi. So in the words of Murata, we can say that Armoured Boros and Orochi should be on similar tiers. Of course, they both have ways of having advantages of one another, but this will be interesting for how we then compare Garou. Let's be honest here, human Garou does not stand a chance against any form of Boros whatsoever. If you remember, we said that human Garou is probably like mountain level and close to the speed of light, but if we actually look at the scaling we gave Armoured Boros in the video, he's more like multi-continental and the speed of light. So if we were to generously round their speed to similar levels, Garou's strength is only 880 millionth of that of Armoured Boros. An ant and a human don't even have that much difference in power. Therefore, human Garou does not stand a chance even against the weakest version of Boros. Half Monster Garou is a completely different story. Half Monster Garou has some interesting scaling when it comes to his speed, because he not only gets faster to the point where he could blitz characters who could previously fight him, such as Royal Ripper, ripping off his head faster than he can even properly react. But then we also have the fact that when Garou faces Orochi, he clearly is shown not being able to dodge a single horn, and later on being quoted to speed up and dodge 8 horns. This is impressive speed scaling, and the fact that he just keeps getting faster, in the words of the likes of Darkshine, just gives more and more credit to his speed. His attack power also goes up, being able to match the likes of Darkshine in raw power. Darkshine is incredibly powerful himself, being so strong that the likes of Evil Natural Water is just giving him a shower in one of his larger forms. Even with all this power we just gave Half Monster Garou, it's not actually enough to compete with the likes of Boros. Half Monster Garou would compare to someone like Darkshine, who should also be equal with someone like Vomit Ugly Fur before he starts degrading. If we compare this with someone like Golden Sperm can easily deal with the likes of Darkshine, and he can easily deal with the likes of Vomit Ugly Fur, so he should be easily able to deal with the likes of Half Monster Garou. And if we remember from Murata, we were saying that Golden Sperm should be similar to the likes of Orochi, and Orochi is similar to the likes of Armoured Boros. So Armoured Boros would be at this level that he could easily deal with characters on a similar strength tier to that of Garou. Garou does have his speed advantage, having better speed scaling, having multiple levels higher than the speed of light, while Boros just has a vague level above the speed of light. But this isn't really enough, it'd just be Garou dodging around till Boros eventually one-shots him. We could give a benefit of the doubt and say something like Boros may allow Garou to adapt, but how long will he let him adapt for, and how long until he loses interest in one-shots? Then we move on to the likes of Monster Garou. Monster Garou is far better than his half-monster counterpart in skill, speed, and power. If we start off with his power starts off at a level stronger than Golden Sperm. He's actually able to defeat the likes of Platinum Sperm, an even more powerful version of the character. We also know that Platinum Sperm has some amazing speed feats that Garou scales to, being just as fast as him, which would make him even faster than the likes of Boros. In fact, we would generously say that Boros caps out around 4 times the speed of light, while Garou's lowest end calculation is 160 times the speed of light. His higher end calculations are more like 2,000 times, so he is way faster than the likes of Boros now, with similar attack potency. And in terms of skill, it's not even worth a comparison. He was readily equivalent to 12 master martial artists before he even gained this. Now he can beat the likes of Bang, and Bang previously was so skilled that he made Garou look like a white belt in comparison in the eyes of Genos. So I can imagine Garou very easily shattering Boros' armor and forcing him to go in its release form as soon as Monster Garou confronts Armored Boros. Now we get to the most interesting matchup, at least in my opinion. We have Release Boros versus Monster Garou. Release Boros is so much faster in his armored form that he with one arm was faster than Saitama, whose Saitama was so fast he could blitz Armored Boros without even appearing on panel. However, Boros' best attribute in his release form is his power, having a boost at least 200 times greater than his armored form, and showing feats better than Saitama's moon jump, as his explosion does more damage to the ship than Saitama's moon jump. And Saitama's moon jump, it ranges from moon level to planetary. We can also use the One Punch Man compass and say that Release Boros is planetary. With that, we can say he's probably a planetary fighter, and to add even more consistency to this, we can use the fact that in Boros' opinion, he thinks that he damaged Saitama, something that is not refuted, and in the original Japanese is actually said by the narrator. Surprisingly, even though Release Boros is shown to be twice as fast as a very much suppressed Saitama, he doesn't actually have the speed to compete with the likes of Monster Garou. Garou, as said a moment ago, was 160 to 2,000 times the speed of light. Armored Boros was vaguely the speed of light, possibly 4 times. Release Form's best scaling is only like 9 times the speed of light. That's nothing compared to Garou. So even though Garou isn't reaching Release Boros in terms of power, in terms of speed, he is way faster. So we can then talk about things like the type of abilities Garou has and would they affect Release Boros. With Garou's speed advantage on Release Boros, I think the best thing he could try on Boros would be something like Bang's Heart Attack Fist he has. The Heart Attack Fist goes past someone's durability directly to their heart to cause them a heart attack. This worked on Bang, someone who was relative to the likes of Garou in terms of power, but it worked on him despite barely making contact with him. So with this, it should be something effective to go past durability and perhaps damage Boros. The problem is, Boros can regenerate from a splat of blood, so he doesn't even need his heart to function, so even his heart attack fists may not even work. And compared to Garou's other abilities, the heart attack fist is definitely the most potent and best use on a character who has a big power advantage. So if this doesn't work, the only thing Garou can do is the same thing he does with Saitama: adapt, get stronger, and evolve into a stronger form. Final Monster Garou is far stronger than the previous Monster Garou. He still has the same speed and skill, if not slightly better in both categories, but his power has gone up massively. Now he's so strong that Saitama, who could previously one-shot him, actually gets shrugged off when he punches Monster Garou. Of course, until Saitama tries harder and actually punches him so hard he makes him human again. But not just that, if we were to also look at how much stronger Garou gets, he's seemingly confident in fighting Saitama several times despite getting like a one-shot difference in power. One-shot differences in One Punch Man have huge multipliers of power, about 10 times, and he had this increase twice, making him at least 100 times stronger. He's nearly as strong as Release Boros, but not quite. He does have the massive speed advantage though, and if they was to fight Release Boros, he would force him to go Meteoric Burst. Meteoric Burst Boros is completely different from his release form. The boost from going into his Meteoric Burst is so great it's stated to surpass the physical limits, which is something very akin to breaking one's limiter in One Punch Man, and is even implied to be a bigger boost than the likes of what he got with his release form from Armoured. If you remember, we said the difference between his Armoured form and his release form was about 200 times. But not only does Meteoric Burst have a boost bigger than that, it's for both power and speed. On like a low end for speed, we say like 1,800 times the speed of light, but we actually have calculations where we have them even higher, where Saitama, who off guard can obviously react to the speed of light, is getting blitzed across Boros' entire ship without being able to react around 6,000 times the speed of light. So Boros is way faster than before. Boros' low end is as good as Garou's high end. Not to mention, they had similar attack potency before, and now Boros is 200 times stronger than that. This is very clearly a stomp in favour of Meteoric Burst Boros, and he'd probably just do what Saitama did and punch the monster out of Garou. However, Garou's story does not end there. We have to now look at the strongest form of Garou, Cosmic Fear Mode Awakened Garou. Now, even though this is the strongest form, it has several different levels to it. As everyone knows, he copies and gets stronger. So we need to analyse each of these individual forms. If we split it into 4 different ways, we can have the initial Garou that does absolutely no copying yet. We can have the Garou that then copies normal Saitama. Then we have the Garou that's already copied Saitama and then copies Blast as well, gaining even more abilities. And finally, the strongest version of Cosmic Female Awakened Garou, when he copies Sirius Saitama and then has like a progressive growth in strength, getting way stronger than before. Also, when it comes to analyzing these, it'll actually be easier to analyze them in reverse order. So we'll be starting off with the Garou that copied Sirius Saitama. In my Boros video, we gave a lot of credit to Boros with his Collapsing Star Roaring Cannon because we could use the attack to scale what percentage the attack was from a Sirius Saitama, or like a portion of whatever power he was using in his Sirius mode. And we estimated it to be around 18%. That's really impressive. However, Garou copied a Sirius Saitama and then proceeded to get stronger and surpass where Saitama was. If we bring up the graph that was mentioned for how Garou was progressing, we could actually plot the absolute maximum we could scale Boros to, and his raw cannon doesn't reach Cosmic Fear Mode at all. So Cosmic Fear Mode in this current state would duplicate Saitama's feat with the Sirius Punch, and one-shot the raw cannon, Boros, or anything Boros could do. If you're wondering about speed for Cosmic Fear Mode Awakened Garou, like is it able to compete with Boros' 6,900 times the speed of light? The answer is yes, it definitely can. The IO feat between Saitama and Garou was so impressive that I actually had to do 829,000 pixels just to find their full path. And then we got a low end speed of 63,400 times the speed of light and a high end speed of 14.8 million times the speed of light. So compared to Boros' high end, Garou is way faster when he copied Sirius Saitama. Moving down the scale to before he copied Sirius Saitama but still having the abilities of both Blast and normal Saitama, we can see that there is actually much more competitiveness between Cosmic Fear Mode Awakened Garou and Meteoric Burst Boros. In fact, when we're comparing them, we should actually just label how each one of them can win, because it outlines exactly how fair this matchup actually is. Starting off with the win cons that Garou has, one thing Garou can do is he can just use Blast's ability to make a hyperspace gate and put it below Boros or seal him inside it, similar to what Blast tried on Garou. This would just, remove Boros from the fight. There wouldn't be anything else to it, and that would be the end right there. Another way that Garou can win is we know that Garou was able to copy Sirius Saitama before Sirius Saitama could even punch him. This would mean that if Boros was to do something like his raw cannon, Garou could copy it and therefore upscale the raw cannon. Another way Garou can win this encounter with Meteoric Burst Boros is actually just to drag out the fight. We know that Meteoric Burst Boros cannot actually fight that long. It was painful for him to stay in his form for the brief time he already did it. So this means if he was to be in a prolonged fight against someone like Garou, who has no restraint like that, then Garou could just wear him down, and because he needs energy to do the Collapsing Star Roaring Cannon, this would be another way that Garou could beat Boros. To understand Boros' win cons, we need to look at the physical stats that we gave both characters. After all, Cosmic Fear Mode Awakened Garou, before he copies Sirius Saitama, only has upscaling from his monster form higher. In my Boros video, we actually made a little chart comparing them, and we had copying Saitama's normal mode actually below Meteoric Burst Boros, but then we had something like the Gamma Ray Burst and his attacks afterwards being even stronger. In terms of speed, we don't know how much faster he got, but what we do know is he's able to keep up with Saitama blow for blow, even though his previous monster form with extra arms couldn't. We can say it's about twice as fast, so we can double the range we gave him. So this would make Boros most likely have a speed advantage, and Garou should have power that wavers between above Boros and below Boros. So what this would mean that if Garou was to try something like the Gamma Ray Burst to overpower Meteoric Burst Boros, what could happen then is Meteoric Burst Boros could counter with his Collapsing Star Roaring Cannon. The Collapsing Star Roaring Cannon would be more powerful than the Gamma Ray Burst, overpower it, and kill Garou. We can actually have a similar outcome if Boros was to go first with his Collapsing Star Roaring Cannon, and instead of copying him like Garou would with Saitama, if he was to try and pull what Blast does with a Hypergate, the Hypergate would just get overloaded, similar to what happened when Garou fought Blast, and when that happens, the raw cannon will just blast through and kill Garou. If you notice a difference in the type of win cons we were talking about for Boros compared with what we were talking about with Garou, you notice all of Boros' win cons mainly focus around the Collapsing Star Roaring Cannon and are all circumstantial, so they are circumstantial win cons. Garu's ones are things he could pull off whenever he wants, and almost all of the win cons can sort of guarantee a win, even if the raw cannon was to go off. What this would mean is that Garu's win cons are definitive ones, and almost an automatic win con, while Boros's are not. His are all circumstantial. This would mean that Garou would be much more likely at winning than Boros, but Boros still has a chance, just a slim one. If we use the Cosmic Fear Mode Awakened Garou that has copied a normal Saitama but not Blast, Garou no longer has the versatility of using the Hyper Gates as a win con. However, it also means he wouldn't try to counter Boros' Collapsing Star Roaring Cannon with a Hyper Gate. This means that actually Garou is more likely to try and adapt to the Collapsing Star Roaring Cannon, which he can do, and more likely to actually win the fight. In this example, a lesser version of Garou is better because his adaptation is his best attribute, and now he is more likely to adapt. In this case, less is more. Looking at the Cosmic Fear Mode Awakened Garou before he does any copying of any characters, this would mean that his mindset would be in copying someone. So if he was to copy Boros, they'd likely go blow for blow, similar to what happened with Saitama. However, since Boros has negative side effects like his stamina or the Collapsing Star Roaring Cannon using all his energy, but Garou doesn't have to suffer these side effects, means that it's just a battle of attrition that Garou should win. Thank you everyone for watching. I now have a One Punch Man playlist full of the One Punch Man videos I have made. So far, there's just 2 of them, the 2.5 hour long video on Garou and the nearly hour long video on Boros. I have 2 more versus battles to do related to One Punch Man. I've got to do King Piccolo versus Boros, and I've got to do Orochi versus Godzilla. Check out my friends Captain Forrest and Korin Keefe, they're content creators who upload a lot more regularly than I do. In the description, you'll find other power scalers, some of which also upload their content and are good friends of mine. Hope you all have a good day. Thank you all for watching, and goodbye.